We've all heard that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. But what if you've been picking the wrong ones your entire life? Before you waste another dollar at the grocery store, here are 6 traditional farm tests to guarantee you never buy a mushy apple again. Once you learn them, you'll see the grocery store display in a completely different light. Let's start with the first and most crucial test, what we orchardists call the undercolor or ground color test. Most people look for a solid, dark blush. If it's a red delicious, they want it solid red. If it's a Honeycrisp, they want it covered in pink. But the blush is just cosmetic. It's caused by direct sunlight hitting the skin, much like a suntan on your shoulders. It doesn't tell you if the apple is ripe. It only tells you which side faced the sun. Instead, look at the background color, specifically on the bottom of the fruit where the sun didn't shine. This is the ground color. If the ground color is a stark, grass green, put it back. That apple was harvested too early. It will be sour, starchy, and astringent. What you want is for that green to have faded into a warm, creamy yellow or a soft, pale cream. Botanically, this shift in color marks the moment the chloroplasts in the skin break down. The chlorophyll, which makes the fruit green and bitter, is disappearing, revealing the carotenoids underneath. This is the tree's way of saying, the starch has turned to sugar. I am ready. Now, look closer. See these tiny freckles on the skin? In botany, we call these linicelles. They are essentially the pores of the apple, allowing the fruit to breathe while it's growing on the branch. But to the trained eye, these pores are a map of sweetness. On an immature, underripe apple, the linicelles are small, smooth, tight, and barely visible. They look like tiny green dots. But as the fruit swells with natural sugars and reaches peak maturity on the tree, the skin stretches and these pores open up. On a sweet, ripe apple, the linicelles will look like small, rusty brown specks, slightly raised. If you run your thumb over them, the skin will feel subtly rough, like very fine sandpaper, rather than slick and waxy. When you feel that texture, you are feeling an apple that was allowed to finish its cycle on the branch, accumulating the maximum possible sugars. Now, picking the perfect fruit is really only half the battle. Once you bring these beautiful, crisp apples home, the real challenge begins, using them before they start to lose that perfect snap. There's nothing worse than watching good food go to waste because you couldn't figure out what to cook with it in time. That's why, even though I'm an old-school grower, I've started using a handy little tool on my phone called the SuggestDinner app. It's a simple Android app that helps you fight kitchen waste. When I bring in a harvest of apples, or if I have some leftover pork chops and onions in the fridge, I just open the app and type in what I have on hand. Just like that, it gives me instant, practical dinner ideas tailored to the exact ingredients in my kitchen. No scanning through endless blogs, no buying extra ingredients you don't need, just simple, delicious ways to make sure nothing goes to waste. Tonight, it looks like we're having apple pork chops. If you want to save money, reduce waste, and make dinner planning a whole lot simpler, search for Suggest Dinner on the Google Play Store and download it today. The third test is all about cell pressure, or what we call turgor. Hold the apple in your palm and press your thumb gently against the shoulder of the fruit near the top, close to the stem. A fresh, crisp apple should feel rock solid. There should be absolutely zero give, and the skin should remain perfectly smooth. If you press and the skin wrinkles, or if your thumb leaves a soft, spongy indentation, put it down. Inside the apple, the cells are like tiny, water-inflated balloons. When the apple is fresh, these cells are packed tight under high pressure, pressing against one another. This is what gives the apple its crisp snap when you bite it. But as the apple sits in storage or on a shelf, it loses moisture through its pores. The cells deflate and lose their pressure. When you bite into a wrinkled, spongy apple, You aren't breaking crisp, tense cell walls. You are simply chewing through collapsed, dry plant fibers. That is where mealiness comes from. Next, look at the connection point, the stem and the cavity it sits in. The stem is the umbilical cord of the fruit. When an apple is harvested at the right time, the tree begins to form an abscission zone, a natural seal at the base of the stem, signaling that the fruit is fully developed. Look for a stem that is relatively thick and firmly attached. If the stem is shriveled, brittle, and dry like a dead twig, it means that the apple was picked long ago and has been sitting in cold storage for months, slowly drying out. Furthermore, look at the cavity, the depression where the stem emerges. In a mature apple, this well should be deep, wide, and rounded. If the cavity is shallow and narrow, the apple was harvested before it had a chance to fully swell and expand. A wide, deep well shows that the fruit reached its full physical potential. This is a test my grandmother taught me, and it works for almost every fruit that grows on a tree or vine. It's the weight to size test. Pick up 2 apples of roughly the same size. Hold one in your left hand and one in your right. Now, weigh them in your mind. You want the apple that feels heavier than it looks. Apples are made up of water, sugars, and cellular structure, along with tiny intercellular air spaces. As an apple ages, or if it grows under poor conditions, those air spaces expand and water evaporates, making the fruit lighter and spongier. An apple that is dense and heavy for its size is packed to the brim with juice. It has high soluble solids, meaning it's packed with natural sugars and acids rather than empty air. When you lift it, it should feel like a solid water balloon, ready to burst. Listen closely. Hear that? It's a sharp, high-pitched, almost metallic ring. Now listen to this one. A dull, hollow thud. This is the thump test, the ultimate decider. When you tap a crisp, fresh apple, the sound waves travel cleanly through the tightly packed water-filled cells. The high tension inside the fruit reflects the sound, creating that high-pitched resonance. But when an apple is mealy, the cellular walls have broken down. The cells are no longer touching tightly. Instead, there are microscopic pockets of air between them. These air pockets act as acoustic dampeners. When you thump it, the sound wave is absorbed and scattered, resulting in a lifeless, flat thud. If it thumps like a hollow piece of wood, leave it on the shelf. If it rings like a bell, it goes into your basket. Now, let's talk about the science of what's actually happening inside this fruit once it leaves the tree. Apples are climacteric fruits. This means that even after they are harvested, they continue to breathe, a process called respiration. They release a natural plant hormone in the form of a gas, ethylene. This ethylene gas is what triggers the starch to sugar conversion. When first harvested, an apple is full of complex starches. Over time, enzymes break those starches down into simple sugars, fructose and glucose. But here lies the big myth that you see on every home decorating show. The beautiful, ambient fruit bowl sitting on the kitchen counter, piled high with apples, bananas, and peaches. Storing your apples at room temperature in a fruit bowl is the fastest way to ruin them. At room temperature, an apple ripens up to 10 times faster than it does in a cold environment. As it releases ethylene, it not only hastens its own demise, turning those crisp cells into mealy mush, but it will also cause every other fruit in that bowl to rot and spoil prematurely. If you want your apples to stay crisp, keep them away from the fruit bowl. Store them in the crisper drawer of your refrigerator, ideally in a perforated plastic bag to maintain humidity while letting excess ethylene escape. Keep them cold, and they will reward you with that fresh-picked snap for weeks. These 6 tests have kept my family eating crisp, sweet apples through long winters for generations. But I know every region and every family has their own wisdom. I want to hear from you. Which of these tests had you never heard of? Did your grandmother have a different way of selecting them, or perhaps a secret apple variety she swore by? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to learn what to do with these apples once you have them, make sure to subscribe. Until next time, keep close to the soil.